Hello out there, and welcome to Booty and Baribeau. He's Josh Booty. I'm Rachel Baribeau. We are glad to be back in the saddle. We have been doing some world traveling. I went to Atlanta, picked my partner up. We went
That's
to
right.
Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, Nashville. He's back in California. Josh, we've been all over the world.
We made the rounds last week. I'm telling you what, it's been a whirlwind, but we caught maybe the biggest game in college football this year, and that was LSU traveling to Alabama and to Tuscaloosa, and we saw a game where it was 10-10 in the second quarter. Alabama got the field goal late, and then went on to really put a whipping on my LSU Tigers in the second half, and just a ball game where the balance of Alabama looked so good. They look like the number one team in the country to me, and I know we've had some conversations since the game, and you feel the same way. Wasn't that balance on offense with Coker? I think he was 18 of 24 for a couple of hundred yards. Henry with a couple of hundred yards rushing. Wasn't that balance just amazing?
Josh, you hit the nail on the head. They talked about in the post-game press conference, the Alabama players did, particularly Henry and a couple of the guys, that they were tired of hearing about Fournette all week. And I tweeted
I
and
would have
said,
been too. Well, I would have been too. All we heard about was Fournette from ESPN magazine covers to Sports Illustrated covers. If I'm Bama, that was a statement game.
absolutely. And I tweeted something to the effect of, all week long we're talking about Leonard Fournette, and Derrick Henry's over here sipping his tea like a la Kermit the Frog, right? And so
Yeah,
he
yeah.
comes out and has a huge game, and it was. I remember I was right there next to him when he did the post game interview there with Nick Saban on ESPN or on CBS, and he was still out of breath because what I've heard about him is that he's a guy that'll run two 40-yard dashes before his one that gets tested because he needs to warm up, and his the players and his coaches say he's the guy that has as much stamina and energy at the end of the game as he does before because of what he's done in the off season.
Yeah, he's a horse, and you can tell. I mean, he's a physical specimen. We talk about Fournette and the things that he brings to the table, but you can't overlook a Derrick Henry and what he brings to the table. I mean, the guy is actually a bigger player or a bigger running back than even Fournette. So to watch what he did to the LSU defense, we didn't know because LSU hadn't really been tested with a great offense this season. And, there's only really a few offenses in the SEC that are really good, and Bama's one of them. But LSU didn't really rise to the occasion. I felt like they didn't play as well as they should have. And, of course, it's a road game. It's a tough environment. But Derrick Henry and that offensive line pushed LSU around. And we saw a game that got out of hand there in the second half. And much like, I know the guy over your back left shoulders, Bear Bryant, that Alabama a game that they played was a lot like, or Bear Bryant would have been proud. It's a Bear Bryant type performance that they put on Saturday.
Josh, you and I always talk about, our favorite types of ball, and I love line of scrimmage ball. I love defensive ball. I was looking at some of the individual stats for the defense on Alabama's side, and you look at those, and it was really indicative of true gang tackling, swarm defense, protecting the box they talked about. And I know, listen, and you're a former quarterback. I know that college football is predicated on offense now, but I also know and still believe that defense wins championships. And if you play that kind of defense, my oh my.
Rachel, they have 10 or 11 NFL players on that defense, and they can rotate guys in, younger guys in on that defensive front, and they just create a lot of problems. There was no holes for Leonard Fournette. It wasn't an issue of whether he had a good game or bad game. He had nowhere to go. He was trying his butt off to make plays. He was trying to get to the outside. They hemmed him in. When he looked to run right off tackle, they were right there. And it seemed like Alabama was just playing great football. And if they play like that, there's really no team in the country that can beat them. I think Ohio State is the only other team that could present some balance problems or could present some problems for because they're balanced and they've got such a great team and they know how to win, and Urban Meyer's a great coach. So that matchup that we might see down the road could be the biggest matchup of the year, and that's Alabama and Ohio State, hopefully in a playoff atmosphere.
And Nick Saban loves those revenge games.
He's good in those revenge games. We know that. We do know that, and there, it's fun. After the game, I didn't get to go with you down in the locker room. I was elsewhere, but you got a chance to see Saban, and I'd love for you to tell the viewers. I know you're fired up. Saban gave you a nice high five after the game. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I covered him for a couple of years through 2 national championships, and somebody once said to me, Nick Saban doesn't know you from Adam's house cat. All you people out there are just a distraction. That's all you are, is a distraction. And all you are is fluff, right? And so I just always operated like that. And then once I left covering him on the beat on a daily basis in Tuscaloosa and became regional and then a national reporter for SiriusXM College Sports Nation, I noticed that he would stop and say, "How are you? How's your mama? Where are you? What are you doing?" Those types of things. And Saturday night in the press conference, everybody's sitting there, and he says goodbye to everybody, and he leaves for the door, Josh Booty, walks back about 10 paces and gives me a fist bump and says, "How you doing?" And I tell you, like the media room was like, "What? Huh? Did that just happen?"
You've earned that respect, of course, by being around him. But I'm telling you, I'm sure he was super fired up for that game, and to get a chance to give you a high five, I'm sure you were pretty happy. And they got a huge one this week. They go to Starkville. You're going in there and visiting with Dak Prescott and his family, and what a big game they've got coming up right after a big win against LSU. So I'm interested to see how they'll go into Starkville after a big win and see if they can continue to build on what they just did against the Tigers.
I think you bring up a great point. And, do they build? The big question from everybody this week has been the psychological hangover. You know it, Josh. I know it. And I think that these coaches, as well as giving the X's and O's to be on the field, they have to be master psychologists. They have to try to corral and help and hem in these young men and the expectations and the success. And I've often heard Saban say it 1,000 times, and he said it again in that press conference. Our guys are motivated more times than not by negative results. So we'll see what comes out of this. This is 1-0. And somebody wanted to talk to him about the SEC championship, and he was like, We're going to talk about Dak Prescott and the Mississippi State Bulldogs because we're both fans of him. We know how much he's improved. But one of the things a lot of people aren't talking about is the improvement, I think, of Manny Diaz coming back to Mississippi State and that defense, I think, holding opponents to an average of 17.2. So, certainly massive improvement on the defensive side of the ball. Lost a lot of playmakers to the NFL, but certainly nothing paltry on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, I think, as the year and the season progresses and moves along, these younger players, because they lost so much last year on both sides of the ball. You talk about the defense; they lost a ton of offenses. That those kids are learning his scheme. They've played a lot of football. They're 8 games into the season. Yes, they got a big test at home this week, but these kids have come along. So Manny Diaz and what he's done with that defensive unit is just get those guys to come along and improve every week so that when they get to games like this, and Mississippi State's getting hot at the right time, another team in the SEC that's getting hotter and hotter is Arkansas.
Yes.
And you're seeing some of these teams develop as the season goes on with these new players that they had to put into these positions this year. Mississippi State didn't know really what it had going into the season other than Dak Prescott.
All right, you talk about that Arkansas game, and Brett Bielema had the famous slip. He couldn't wait to get on his wife. Oops, the airplane after the game. But all joking aside, they are hot at the right moment. And what we just talked about, can Les rally the troops after a just knee-buckling loss? I'm talking about they just hit him straight across the knees, square across the knees. Can he rally the troops? Because here's the thing. All LSU needs is Alabama to lose again, and they represent the West.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you could talk about within this ball game. Arkansas's had 3 games in a row where they've scored 50-plus points. That hadn't happened in 15, 16 years since 99. They are very balanced. Their quarterback's thrown 21 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Brandon Allen's had a wonderful season. They have a 1,000-yard back in Alex Collins. So they present a lot of balanced problems for anybody. They're not great defensively. Ole Miss scored 52 points in that 4 overtime game last week that Arkansas edged them in, but they're getting hot at the right time on offense. And this early in the season, we really didn't know what Arkansas had. We knew that they had the big guys up front. They could push people around, the big offensive line, and that's what they were going to rely on. But the quarterback play has been awesome. And we talked to Clint Sterner, a former quarterback, a couple of weeks ago, and he goes, the state of Arkansas doesn't even understand how good our quarterback is. So, he believes in him, and I know the staff believes in him. I talked to one of the grad assistants this morning at Arkansas, and he was right about to jump on the team plane. He goes, we feel like we got a real good shot at beating LSU on the road. We can sneak in there and maybe win one on the road. And they're big underdogs because it's a night game at Tiger Stadium. What Les Miles has to do is he has to create some balance on offense. We know Fournette's a great runner. They didn't run the ball last week. That's what they want to do, and that's what they're going to try to do, but they also got to get the wideouts involved. And I think that's going to be the difference in the ballgame. If LSU can get the wideouts involved, LSU wins. If not, Arkansas is going to play them real tight.
All right, for Gridiron Now, I called the upset. Arkansas over LSU.
Oh, don't do that to me. Don't
I'm
do that
sorry,
to me.
Josh Booty. I did. I called it, and I need to amend the statement. All LSU needs Alabama to do is lose, and they have to win out. They got a couple of tough games on the back end here, feisty teams, conference games, and so they would need to win out and need Alabama to lose. There's another big game. Lost its luster this year, happening at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, 12 p.m. Eastern, and that's the Georgia-Auburn rivalry. But both teams are down when they put it at 11, 12 o'clock in the morning.
I think, it's going to be a fun game. You wake up, you get out of bed. I remember those early games. We played at Florida one time, and it was that noon game, and you wake up out of bed, you get your eggs and bacon, and you go to the stadium. It's time to strap it on, strap your chin strap up. So, it's one of those games where Georgia's going to have to play better than they have been. Auburn's getting a little bit better, but I haven't seen much improvement in Georgia. Georgia's, of course, banged up. Their quarterback play hasn't been up to par at all. Jeremy Johnson and Auburn start to maybe get something going, and so it's going to be one of those games where anything can happen, but I believe Auburn's got the edge. It's a home game for them. They're playing a little bit better than Georgia, and Mark Richt right now is in a very tough situation.
He's in a tough situation, and a lot of people think that he will no longer be the coach there, regardless of how they finish at the end of the season.
And you've got to remember, 4 or 5 weeks ago, they were top 5 in the country. So to see them just downslide like this is just awful, and I hate it for Mark Richt, but it's happened.
It is awful, and another thing that was awful at the beginning of the season was to see Jeremy Johnson struggle. I have often done the personal stories, the human interest stories. I enjoy getting to know kids beyond the helmet, inside the helmet, their families, what they've gone through. And so when Jeremy Johnson struggled earlier this season, people, as they often are, they hide behind the guise of the anonymity of social media, and they were really ugly to this kid, and throwing a lot of stones. And it was really, really just enjoyable. I was happy for him to see a light go on, it felt like, in the Texas A&M game. And, not saying he's going to be a world beater or a Heisman Trophy winner as everybody touted him, but it was just nice to see the light go on, Josh.
It seems like every quarterback that plays against A&M, the light comes on. It's because their defense is not that good. They don't stop the run. Yes, they do rush the passer, and they've created a lot of problems with sacks this year, and that hurts your offense because, if you lose yardage in a big sack situation, it brings up 3rd and long and all that, whatever. But A&M haven't been able to stop the run, and I think that's the difference in A&M's defense and other teams that are really good in the SEC is quarterbacks look good against that offense against that defense that Chavis and them have this year. And I think they'll improve as time goes on next year and the following years because Chavis is very good at the coordinator position, but they just don't have the horses at linebacker and the secondary that some of these other teams have.
Well, they had, just like years past, they had success early, and a lot of people were saying Chavis was the best, right? He was the best defensive hire. And you know what, Josh? It looks like the best defensive hire may not be in the SEC. I'm looking at Gene Chizik up at UNC, and meanwhile, they're 8-1. They scored like basketball number of points against Duke last week, and they may stand in the way of Clemson and a playoff berth.
Yeah, that could be one of the epic ball games. They're playing very well. Clemson is an unbelievable team. They've played well all year long. They haven't made many mistakes. I think the teams that don't make mistakes this part of the season are the teams that are really tough to beat. You got to be loaded. You've got to be healthy. You've got to be deep, and you can't make mistakes, and that's turnovers. If you looked at like how Alabama lost early in the season to Ole Miss, there was 5 turnovers in that ball game, and that's the reason they lost. They still almost come back and won that game. But Alabama's a much stronger team and deeper team than Ole Miss, and I think those are the teams that are going to win late in the season. Ohio State, like last year, they were so deep. They lost their quarterback, and Cardell Jones stepped in and won a national championship for them. So it took a backup quarterback and won the national championship. So those are the teams that are going to win late in the season. Are the teams that are very deep and stay healthy.
All right, Josh. One of the things we did this week. We had the premiere for Climb for Kevin in Nashville. You stayed, my partner, you stayed 2 extra days in Nashville to attend that premiere. I just want to publicly give you some props and say thank you. Thank you.
Man, I had a wonderful time. You guys put on a wonderful show. The movie's produced wonderfully, and it was fun to watch you guys climb the mountain and do it for Kevin. I don't know Kevin personally. Hopefully one day I'll get a chance to meet him. But what an awesome human being. I know he's a University of Alabama alum and football player, and that's the enemy if you went to LSU. But what a fine dude he is, and I'm telling you, he was witty, he was fun, he interacted the whole time with you guys, and it looked like it was very heartfelt, and it made me want to climb a mountain, I'll tell you that much. But what a wonderful show, and I can't wait for other people to see it. And now I realize kind of what ALS is all about and what he's gone through, and it was heartfelt.
Well, thank you so much. And if you want to get more information on Kevin Turner, who has ALS, we're fighting for everybody who has ALS. I want to send a special thanks to Tim Shaw. He was our man of honor, the youngest player in the NFL diagnosed with ALS, special teams with the Titans, and in his young 30s. But if you want to get more information on how to help, every dollar goes to research to find a cure. And Kevin and Tim, they know they represent everybody out there, your mothers, the fathers, the sons, the uncles, and the grandmothers and grandfathers that have ALS. You can go to KevinTurnerFoundation.org, make a donation, and we will be bringing Climb for Kevin to a city near you. And stay tuned right here to Booty and Baribeau, because we're trying to cook up something around the SEC Championship, and we want to see you. We want to meet you. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, bud.
All right.